It took me 20 years to fall in love with a monster, and 4 years of marriage to admit it. This morning, I spent 30 minutes applying a thick, pale concealer over the yellow-green shadow blooming under my left eye, a map of his anger. I had to use a color-correcting palette, peach for the blue, green for the red. It was an art I had perfected, this painting of a normal life over a canvas of bruises. My son, who is 5, watched me from the doorway, his little brow furrowed. "Mommy, are you playing makeup?" "Just getting ready for work, sweetie," I whispered, forcing a smile that pulled at the cracked skin of my lip. He knows. Children always know. They absorb the tension in a home like a sponge sucks up poison. They know the sound of walking on eggshells. They know the precise frequency of their father's quiet rage, the one that precedes the storm. My life with Jay is a long, slow exercise in terror. He is the peace destroyer, the black hole in our home that pulls all light, all joy, all sound into itself. And the guilt, God, the guilt is the worst part. It's a constant, heavy blanket that smothers me, telling me I deserve this. That this entire, horrifying life is nothing more than karma, a debt I am paying for the choices that led me here. But it wasn't always this way. Or rather, the monster always wore the most convincing mask. I met him 20 years ago. I was 19, stupidly hopeful, and just starting to figure out who I was. Jay was older, magnetic, and had a way of looking at you that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. I was attracted to him instantly, a pull so strong it felt like gravity. He told me he was seeing someone. It was the first lie, a small, gray, easy-to-swallow lie. Seeing someone sounds casual, temporary, like a placeholder. It doesn't sound like engaged. It doesn't sound like building a life. I was single, and his curated vagueness gave me permission to believe what I wanted to believe. So we started seeing each other. It was casual, hidden, electric. It was wrong, and a part of me knew it, but I was too drawn to the flame to care about the smoke. I was naive. I thought I was just having fun. I didn't know that I was taking the first step into a trap that wouldn't spring shut for 2 decades. I didn't know that this magnetic, charming man, who was so casually betraying the woman he was promised to, would one day become my savior, my lover, the father of my children, and, ultimately, my abuser. I didn't know that the charming half-truth, seeing someone, was just the first brick in the wall he would build around me, a wall that would one day become my prison. The human heart is a stupid, desperate thing. It will latch onto any glimmer of kindness in a sea of darkness. My casual, thrilling, and deeply wrong entanglement with Jay was forced to a halt by a sharp right turn in my own life. Not long after we started seeing each other, I became pregnant. It wasn't his. It was a brief, forgettable relationship that followed a fight with Jay, a pathetic attempt to prove to myself that I wasn't waiting for him. The man was gone before the test turned positive. I was terrified, but a strange, fierce love bloomed in me. I wanted that baby. I had a difficult pregnancy from the start, but I held on. Then, halfway through my second trimester, the cramping started. The bleeding. The sterile, cold silence of the ultrasound room as the technician's face went blank. I lost the baby. It was my second loss, and it didn't just break me. It hollowed me out. I was sent into a dark, suffocating place. I was a ghost haunting my own apartment. I stopped eating. I stopped talking. I just ceased. My friends tried. They brought casseroles and offered platitudes. "You're young," they said. "You'll have another." They meant well, but their words were like stones. But Jay, he was still with his fiancée, but he showed up. He didn't bring food. He didn't offer advice. He just sat with me. He sat on the edge of my bed in my darkened room, the one I hadn't left in days, and he just existed. He would put a hand on my shoulder. He would let me cry for hours, great, gulping, ugly sobs, without ever expecting anything in return. He never flinched. He never told me to be strong. He just absorbed my grief. He was there for me in a way no one else was, in a way I desperately needed. And that's when it happened. Not the stupid, 19-year-old infatuation. This was different. In that dark, hollow place, I fell in love with him. I fell in love with the man who held me together when I was falling apart, even as he was living a lie with another woman. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. How could this gentle, empathetic soul be the same man who was cheating on his fiancée? I knew it was wrong. I knew I was the other woman, a title I never thought I'd wear. I was building my entire emotional world on a foundation of his betrayal. I should have gone to therapy. I should have unpacked the grief, the self-loathing, the toxic attachment. Instead, I tried to start over. I ripped my life out by the roots. I moved across the country, got a new job, and cut off all physical contact with Jay. We stayed friendly, a text here, a message there. Happy birthday. How are you? But I kept the distance, an entire continent between my new life and my old mistakes. And I met was everything Jay wasn't. He was stable. He was kind. He was honest. He was a safe harbor. He loved me quietly, calmly, and completely. We built a life. We got married. It was a good life. It was the life I was supposed to have. I was safe. But I learned a hard lesson. Safety is not a cure for addiction. And I see now, addicted to Jay, addicted to the drama, the intensity, the man who had seen me at my absolute worst and stayed. My safe, quiet life with was about to be shattered, and I was the one holding the hammer. Grief is a door. It opens you up to things you would normally keep locked away. My new life with was steady, but it wasn't without its own private heartbreaks. We wanted a child. We wanted it more than anything. We tried, and tried. Every month, the single pink line on the test felt like a personal failure. We went through the tests, the sterile appointments, the hushed clinical conversations. The diagnosis came like a judgment. IVF was our only option. It was expensive, invasive, and uncertain. We were preparing for that battle, bracing ourselves for the emotional and financial toll when I got the call. It was my aunt. You need to come home. It's your mom. My dad had died the year before, a sudden, shocking heart attack that had left a permanent crater in our family. My mom, she was my rock, and now she was sick, really sick. It's cancer, my aunt's voice cracked over the phone. I booked the first flight I could. Was supportive as always. Go be with her. Don't worry about anything here. He kissed my forehead at the airport, and I felt a pang of guilt. I was leaving him to handle the IVF consultations alone, while I flew back into the very orbit I had tried so hard to escape. Stepping back into my childhood home felt like stepping back in time. The air was thick with grief, old and new. My mom was frail, a shadow of the vibrant woman she had been. I was her only support, and the weight of it, her illness, my father's absence, my own infertility was overwhelming. I was emotionally raw, exposed, and Jay knew I was home. I heard about your mom, he messaged me. I'm so sorry. Can I see you, just to give you a hug? Just a hug, the same lie as seeing someone. I met him for coffee. He had married her, the fiancée, they were together. He looked older, but his eyes were the same. That same magnetic pull. He listened as I vented about my mom, my fears, my failing body. He held my hand across the Formica table. It felt terrifyingly like coming home. That night, he came over to my mom's house after she was asleep. We sat on the porch, a bottle of wine between us. We talked for hours. He was unhappy, he said. His marriage was a mistake, he said. He had never stopped thinking about me, he said. He was a predator, and I was wounded prey. I knew, even as his hand touched my cheek, that it was wrong. I thought of back home, scheduling appointments, a man of such profound goodness. And I let Jay in anyway. We ended up sleeping together. It was desperate and sad and felt like an inevitability, like a relapse. It was the ultimate betrayal of my marriage, of the good life I had built. I stayed with my mom for a month, my life bifurcated. By day, I was the devoted daughter, crushing pills into applesauce, reading to my mother, holding her hand. By night, I was the adulterer, sinking back into the toxic comfort of Jay. A week before I was due to fly back to I felt it. The familiar, sickening lurch in my stomach, the exhaustion that went beyond grief. I bought a test at a 24-hour pharmacy. I took it in my mother's bathroom at 3 a.m. It was positive. Instantly, I was shocked, happy, scared, ashamed, all at once. After all the trying, the failing, the clinical diagnoses, 1 month with Jay and I was pregnant. I returned home to my safe life, carrying the biggest secret and the most profound betrayal of my life. I didn't know how to tell him. I was a walking bomb. And because of my history, 3 losses by this point, I was convinced the baby wouldn't survive. I didn't have to confess. The bomb was about to be detonated for me. There is no secret that doesn't eventually find its way to the light, and mine was never going to stay buried. I came home to M a different person. I was a ghost in my own marriage. The anxiety was a living thing, a viper coiled in my chest. I had panic attacks that left me gasping on the bathroom floor. I was losing weight, the pregnancy sickness compounded by my crushing guilt. M was worried, but he attributed it to my mother's illness. "You're just stressed, honey," he'd say, rubbing my back. "We'll get through this." His kindness was like acid. I was trapped. I couldn't tell him I was pregnant because how could I explain how? And I couldn't bring myself to confess the affair because it would destroy him. So I just waited. I waited for the miscarriage I was sure would come. This baby, conceived in sin, couldn't possibly survive. It felt like a biblical punishment, a scarlet pea, visible only to me. But the baby held on. Week after week, my secret grew. I was just starting to show, my lies becoming physically harder to hide, when J.'s wife, the one he was unhappy with, the one his marriage was a mistake with, found our messages. The call came on a Tuesday. M was at work. It was an unknown number. "Is this?" she said, using my name. Her voice was shaking with a rage so cold it burned. "Yes, who is this?" "This is J.'s wife." My blood turned to ice. My hand gripped the counter so hard my knuckles went white. "I know what you've been doing," she spat. "I know you've been sleeping with my husband." I couldn't speak. What was there to say? "He's a liar," she continued, her voice breaking. "And you're a monster. You knew he was married." I'm so sorry," I whispered. It was all I could manage. "Save it," she sneered. "I'm just calling to let you know that your husband will be getting a call from me as soon as I hang up." I tried to beg her not to, but the line was already dead. The breaking point wasn't a slow crumble, it was an explosion. M came home that night, his face a mask of disbelief and a pain so profound I will never, ever forget it. "He called me," he said, his voice was hollow. He called me, after his wife called him at work demanding to know who I was. He called me to apologize before she could get to me. He looked at me. "Is it true?" I just nodded, tears streaming down my face. "He told me," M said, his voice breaking, "that you two have a long history. He told me you're in love with him." No, it's not." "Is it true?" he yelled, a sound so foreign from him it shook the walls. And then I told him everything, the affair, the history, and finally the last devastating blow. "I'm pregnant," I sobbed, "and it's his." That was it. The man I had loved, the good, stable, kind man, just broke. He sat on the floor, his head in his hands, and made a sound I can only describe as a soul dying. Our divorce was fast. His was not. J.'s wife made him pay for every lie. I didn't care. I moved back home, pregnant and alone, to be near my mom. My entire life, the one I had built so carefully, was in ashes. Jay and I started to talk. "We can build a family together," he said. His voice was so reassuring. "A real one. I want our child to be raised in a loving, stable home, something I never had, something you never had." I believed him. I was desperate to believe him. I had lost everything, my husband, my home, my integrity. This baby was my only hope. And Jay was the man who had sat with me in the dark all those years ago. He was the man I loved. I told myself that all the betrayal, all the pain, was just a twisted, broken path to where we were always meant to be. I was wrong. The betrayal hadn't even truly begun. The twist wasn't that Jay was a liar. I had always known that. The twist was the depth of the depravity. The twist was that I wasn't the love of his life. I was just one of many, a convenient port in his self-made storm. I moved back home, my belly swelling with J.'s child. My mom was in the final, painful stages of her illness, and I was her primary caregiver. I was grieving my mother, my marriage, and my dignity, all while trying to build a new family with Jay. He had promised me stability, a loving home. But once I was back, trapped by my pregnancy and my mother's decline, the mask didn't just slip. He ripped it off. I discovered he was still talking to his ex-wife. Not just logistics about the divorce, but emotional, intimate conversations. He was reassuring her. At the same time, I found messages from another woman, let's call her Sarah, someone he was seeing while I was pregnant with his child. And then there were others. multiple other women, apps on his phone, late night calls. I felt destroyed. It was a physical sensation, like my entire skeleton had turned to dust. The man I had destroyed my life for, the man who had held my hand and promised me a stable home for our baby, was a compulsive, pathological liar. And the worst part? A dark, ugly voice in my head whispered, "You deserve this." This was my karma. I had been the other woman, and now I was simply the main woman who had to tolerate all the new other women. I had built my house on his betrayal, and I was shocked when the foundation crumbled. We fought, God, we fought. Not normal couple arguments, but raw, screaming, toxic battles that rattled the windows of my dying mother's home. I would confront him with evidence, texts, emails, his absurdly weak lies, and he would gaslight me with the skill of a master surgeon. "You're crazy. You're pregnant and hormonal. She's just a friend. You're insecure because of your past, because of what you did to M." He twisted everything. My affair with him became the weapon he used to beat me into submission, to justify his affairs. I don't know why I stayed. I truly don't. Maybe it was the baby. Maybe it was my mother's impending death. Maybe it was the shame. I had nowhere else to go. I had burned my old life to the ground. This toxic, volatile, liar-filled life was all I had left. My beautiful son was born into this chaos. For a little while, things improved. The presence of this perfect, innocent child seemed to sober Jay up. He cut off some of the other women. He was a doting father, which only confused me more. How could he be so loving to our son and so cruel to me? About a year later, I got pregnant again. It wasn't planned. It was the product of a desperate, toxic makeup sex cycle. But the relationship was still a dumpster fire. Then, the pandemic hit. The world shut down, and my prison walls became solid. I was 5 months pregnant, working a full-time job from home, and the sole caregiver for our 1-year-old son. Jay, who had medical issues, wasn't working. He was just there, a brooding, menacing presence in the house. The gaslighting escalated into paranoid accusations. He accused me of cheating. Me, the pregnant woman working 50 hours a week with a toddler at her feet, who hadn't left the house in months. It was textbook projection, his own infidelity bubbling up as suspicion of me. He dangled marriage over my head like a prize. "I'll marry you when, and if I want to," he'd sneer. He only agreed to marry me when it benefited him. His medical issues had worsened, and he needed to be on my insurance. We got married at a courthouse. I wore a simple dress. I felt nothing. No joy, no love, just a cold, sinking finality. I had chained myself to my own destroyer. I still don't know why I agreed to any of it. Shame is a powerful motivator, and I was drowning in it. The resolution I found wasn't justice. It was an escalation. The revenge was karma, turning its full, ugly face toward me. I knew I couldn't survive in that house. I couldn't raise my children in that toxicity. My only escape was my career. I got an offer for a job abroad, a huge opportunity, a chance to start fresh, a way to put an ocean between us and the women he was still messaging. I insisted on moving, for my career, for my kids. Jay, who still wasn't working and was recovering from his medical problems, resisted. He didn't want to go. He didn't want to be in a foreign country where he had no power, no network, and was completely dependent on me. He used divorce as a threat, a tool to guilt me into staying. "If you take this job, we're done." "Then we're done," I said, my voice shaking. "I am going, with or without you." He came, reluctantly. He came because he had no job, no money, and no other options. I was his meal ticket. Life here became a fresh new hell. His insecurity, fed by his total dependence on me, metastasized into pure, controlling rage. I was the only one providing for our family, our apartment, our food, our children's clothes, his medical care, and he treated me like the enemy. He accused me of cheating with coworkers. He monitored my phone. He didn't want me talking to friends. He timed my trips to the grocery store. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. My life became a suffocating triangle: home, work, daycare. And then he started to hit me. It started small, a shove. A hand gripping my arm so tight it left finger-shaped bruises. A phone thrown at my head. Then came the holiday party. My first work event since moving. I was excited, nervous. I put on a dress, did my makeup. I felt for a few hours like a person again. I talked to my colleagues, I laughed. When we got home, his face was black with rage. You were flirting with everyone, he hissed. You embarrassed me. I didn't even have time to answer. He beat me so badly I had to call out of work for a week. My face was so swollen and bruised, I couldn't open my left eye. My eyes were filled with broken blood vessels. I told my boss I had a severe allergic reaction. The lie tasted like ash. I never imagined I'd be this person. The woman who lies about her bruises. The woman who flinches when her husband raises his hand. Trapped, ashamed, embarrassed. But I stayed. I told myself it was for the kids. I told myself it was a one-time thing. It wasn't. The next year, after a dinner out, I ended up in the hospital. I still don't remember everything that happened. I remember him screaming at me in the car. I remember getting home. I remember his hands. The next thing I remember is a doctor stitching a gash in my eyebrow, the bright, sterile light blinding me. I had become the thing I never thought I'd be, a victim, a statistic. A woman trapped in a violent, abusive marriage, thousands of miles from anyone who could help. And I felt, in my core, that this was my punishment. This was the price I had to pay for breaking my heart. Today, our home is not a home, it is a minefield. We live walking on eggshells, the children and I, our movements and moods dictated by Jay's. He is cruel, even to our children. He has no patience. He yells, he snaps. He mimics their cries, he destroys the peace. If the kids are laughing, he tells them to be quiet. If I am smiling, he finds a way to stamp it out. What are you so happy about? Thinking about your boyfriend? My work has suffered. How can I concentrate on a financial report when I'm terrified the man in the next room is going to throw a coffee mug at my head? My mental health is shattered. I am a shell. I am anxious, depressed, and so tired. The guilt is my constant companion. It tells me this is my fault. I made this bed. I chose this. I betrayed a good man, for this monster. And now I have subjected my children to him. That is the guilt that eats me alive. My children, my beautiful, innocent children, are paying for my past mistakes. But something is different now. The fog of shame and fear is finally, blessedly, starting to clear. It's not just about me anymore, it's about them. I have secured employment elsewhere. A new job in a new city. It's almost time to move again. I've spent the last 6 months planning. I have a secret bank account. I have copies of our passports, our children's birth certificates, our marriage license. I have been documenting his abuse, taking pictures of the bruises, saving the threatening texts. I have spoken to a lawyer. I don't want to go with him. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. He senses the shift. He has been trying to be better. He buys me flowers, which sit rotting on the counter because I can't stand to look at them. He talks about our future. But his eyes are still cold. The monster is still there, just waiting. I want him to go back to his family. I want him to leave. I want out. My mother is gone. My first marriage is a distant memory of a good man I failed. My past is a minefield of bad choices and devastating karma. I cannot change that. But my future does not have to be this. I look at my son and my daughter, and I know, with a clarity that cuts through the fear, that I am not just their mother. I am their only way out. This is not what I deserve. This is not what they deserve. I just want a safe, peaceful life for me and my children. I have made it this far. I have survived him. I have survived the beatings, the gaslighting, the isolation. I am no longer screaming into the void. I am screaming my way out.